How big is this problem?
There was a study that just came out actually that surveyed teenagers, and around 75% of them shared that they wish Instagram and TikTok never existed. I don't know anyone so far I've spoken to that's like, hey, I want to be spending more time on my phone. Founders of Google and Instagram, Facebook, they don't give these products to their children.
What would you say to someone like that who's like, man, like I can't even consider giving up my smartphone. Like I live on the thing and I'm so productive on it.
When we talk about being moderate with our devices, it's like nurses going to high schools telling students to moderate ecstasy.
Welcome to the Restored Podcast. I'm Joey Panarelli. If you come from a divorced or broken family, this show is for you. We help you heal your brokenness, navigate the challenges, and build healthy relationships so you can break that cycle and build a better life. My guest today is Andrew Laubacher. Andrew is the executive director of Humanality, a movement helping people overcome digital addiction and reclaim their humanity. With degrees in theology and philosophy and a decade of experience as a touring musician, he offers a unique global perspective on human connection. As a national board certified health and wellness coach and personal trainer, Andrew blends his expertise in well-being with Humanality's mission, promoting balanced technology use. His innovative approach empowers people to reconnect with authentic human experiences in the digital age. I'm really excited to have Andrew on the show. As you guys know, technology certainly has benefits, but there are dangers as well. Sadly, our misuse of technology is causing us to be more depressed, more anxious, less happy, less healthy than ever before. And perhaps worst of all, it's really destroying our ability to heal, grow, and build healthy relationships. And so in this episode, Andrew and I dive into that. We talk about the alarming data on how misusing tech is hurting us, especially young people, how tech addiction is perhaps the biggest barrier to achieving great, hard things, how to build an intentional relationship with technology. He has some awesome advice on that. And finally, he offers a novel yet simple solution to help you find freedom from digital addiction. So if you have a smartphone or you watch screens maybe more than you'd like, this episode is for you. Quick note, I apologize for the background noise. Due to a canceled flight, Andrew actually had to speak with us from the Denver airport in the Delta Airlines lounge, but I'm really glad that he did. Here's our chat. Andrew, welcome to the show, man. So good to have you here.
Hey, honored to be here. Thanks so much.
I want to talk about your apostolate, the work that you're doing. I was checking out your website, obviously, and definitely impressed by what you're doing and just how well researched it is and just how big of a problem this is. It's such a huge issue that we're all facing. And so I'm really excited to dive into the conversation. For people who aren't aware, what problem are you guys trying to solve exactly?
Yeah, so Humanality exists to help people discover freedom through an intentional relationship with technology. So we are really helping people be more fully human, and especially in regards to our phones and devices and TVs and tablets and all the addiction regarding our phones and social media and gaming and pornography. We're addressing that problem, which is like the elephant in the room, but the elephant's really in our pockets, and it's affecting all of us in many different ways. But at this point in our society, we're really helping people get their lives back and get their time back.
So good. It's amazing. I know we'll get into this in a little bit, but I've heard stories of people when they actually take a break from technology, what comes of it. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But I wanted to ask you the kind of maybe obvious question of why do you care about this? Like you're a talented guy. You could be doing a lot of things. Like why this?
Yeah, at least in my own experience, I'm a millennial. So I had half of my life, without a phone, and then kind of half my life with a phone and all the social media platforms. And yeah, I got a smartphone in college,
Hmm.
2010, and got on every, social media platform. I mean, I was on MySpace and AOL Instant Messaging and, all the early kind of things like that. I had the Razor, dude, and I thought I was like the coolest kid ever. But as all these different platforms came out, I began to experience the addiction to all of them myself. So just the comparison, the wasted time, the lust, and that just began to get just progressively worse in my life. I've been a musician pretty much most of my life. That's been my career the last 10 years. So playing music at, conferences and retreats, and had a band that traveled around the world playing music. I was
Oh,
playing the game, sharing all the places and people and flights and cool trips. And I just noticed my own addiction to feeling good, getting more likes. And yeah, by 2018, I'd say I was addicted to all the platforms: Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And I personally was just getting tired of the struggle with lust and comparison and wasted time and just feeling lesser, like I should be in this different place at this stage of my life, or all my friends getting married off, and finding their person, and I'm not. So anyway,
Mm.
2018, I decided to delete all my social media and go to a flip phone. And my record label and management at the time was like, that's a horrible idea. Like, how are you going to get gigs and events? And I was like, dude, this stuff just is not making me happy. And
Mm.
I deleted all of it. And that year, God took me all over the world, North America, all over Canada, South America, Europe, Jerusalem, all without social media, all with the flip phone. And it was just this moment of real freedom. Like my relationships improved. I got my time back, my purity improved. I was beginning to experience like surprises about things, like about stuff happening in friends' lives that like, oh my gosh, I found out they had a baby, and I didn't know. And we'll get to do this thing called like catching up with people, like in person, So anyway, that's kind of where this all started for me. And I just noticed, even while I was on the road playing music, in front of all these people, I saw the mental health epidemic unfolding before my eyes. And I began to be very passionate about healing. I've always been fascinated with healing pretty much since I was 21. So for me, I wanted to help people. And I just felt like music wasn't enough. Like when I was on stage playing, like I wanted more. And so I started studying nutrition and health and wellness and longevity and mental health, and started to find, in this intersection with technology, I just began to see more and more we're getting sicker and sicker as a society, almost, on every front. And I wanted to help people heal. And I noticed that technology was really affecting us in many different ways. So there's a lot more to the story, but that's kind of how I got interested in these topics. And to me, it really comes down to healing. How can I help, people heal?
I love that. One of the things I love about your mission is that it gets to the root of so many other problems. And I think that for so long in our culture, we've just been treating symptoms. And now you're, especially with this, like that's what we try to do here as well. You're going to the root. Talk about that.
Yeah, let me hit you first with just a little bit of the data. I'm kind of a nerd. So I'm going to hit you with a slew of stuff. This is going to be a little overwhelming, but it's going to this is obviously describing maybe the symptomology, and then I can kind of share some of the root, changes we're looking to present to the world. Children aged 8 to 12 in the United States spend an average of 4 to 6 hours a day watching or using screens, while teens spend up to 9 hours a day on screens. This is Common Sense Media. That was 2019, so that number is actually even higher. Excessive screen time is associated with a 30% higher risk of anxiety and depression in adults. A study of 4,520 adolescents found that those who spent more than 7 hours a day on screens were twice as likely to be diagnosed with depression and anxiety as those who use screens for an hour a day. 2021 study found that 210 million people worldwide suffer from social media addiction. Research shows that limiting social media to 30 minutes a day can lead to significant improvement in well-being. I mean, there's an incredible amount of information on gaming right now in regards to pornography. 28,258 users are watching pornography every second. A study found that 64% of young adults aged 13 to 24 actively seek out pornography weekly or more. And here's kind of a synthesis analysis. A study of 2,587 adults found that problematic internet use, including social media, gaming, and pornography, was associated with poor mental health, increased suicidal ideation, and decreased physical activity. So that's just some of the data. Obviously, this book by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation has really been blowing up lately. Since the last 10 years, anxiety and depression have skyrocketed amongst teen girls and boys. 10 to 14-year-old girls have experienced a quadrupling in self-harm, directly correlating to this moment when the smartphone came out and the front-facing screen. So these are a lot of different problems, right? I don't think the technology piece is the answer to all of them. I'd say it's a huge contributing factor. And all the data is pointing to that the more you're on these things, the worse mental health outcomes you experience. So our idea is, hey, how can we help people get more human interaction, more face-to-face, in-person interaction, get outside, get sunlight, get moving, and actually do this thing together, right? Here's the bread and butter of Humanality. This is a movement. So it's people doing this together. Right now we're at 6 universities, over 300 students that are essentially giving up their smartphones and taking on dumb phones to be a part of this movement. And when you realize there's people that want to do this together, that's the game changer. There was a study that just came out actually that surveyed teenagers, and around 75% of them shared that they wish Instagram and TikTok never existed. So we're actually giving young people the opportunity to opt out of this social contagion of this need to belong via social media platforms and allowing them to reintegrate their friendships, their purity, get their time back. And it's already been incredible. We're only in our second year as an organization, but the testimonies coming in are just amazing.
Wow, man, so good. And how big is this problem, would you say? Like, obviously, all those stats show the seriousness of it and mind blowing, honestly. We'll make sure to link all that in the show notes. But my goodness, how big is this problem?
I mean, it's definitely universal. So there's 2 billion people on the planet that have smartphones. I don't know anyone so far I've spoken to that's like, hey, I want to be spending more time on my phone. I also have never heard anyone after they scroll Instagram for like 4 hours be like, wow, my life is incredible. Everything is so great in the world, and I'm just so looking forward to this day.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
those aren't the things that people experience. And we have to understand that these different tech you know, gurus, different founders of Google and Instagram, Facebook, they don't give these products to their children. So Steve Jobs was interviewed in a 2010 interview and was asked, how are your kids enjoying the new iPad? He said, we don't give it to them. We limit their technology. And here's the also funny part.
Mm.
All these guys, Eric Schmidt from Google, Mark Zuckerberg, Kevin Systrom, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all these guys went to Waldorf schools, which are zero to low technology schools. So, and that's where they send their kids as well. So you kind of know something's off when the guys creating these products aren't giving it to their children. And they themselves created these products from a place of growing up without them. So we're really helping people, one, understand that these platforms are addictive. It's actually behavioral addiction. And we don't use that word flippantly, right? It's actually dopaminergic neurological wiring that's happening. And they've essentially exploited the human brain in such a way that we constantly feel that pull, right? The average American is checking their device, just looking about 352 times a day. That's almost every 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Some other numbers are even worse. So there's a reason you can't stop checking, right? Two major mechanisms they're using: social approval and intermittent positive feedback. So a lot of these, companies went to the slot machines of Las Vegas and actually, looked at how they utilized intermittent positive feedback to create, greater dopamine responses to keep you coming back for more. So that's your Instagram, your Facebook, your, Snapchat, TikTok. But then even just the idea of communication. I mean, pretty much everyone constantly is checking email, text, phone calls. I mean, there's never a point where we're disconnected. So once we help create boundaries, once we help educate people on how these technologies are addictive, and actually this was their intention, you kind of build up this rebellious anger of like, you know what? One, I don't like being used, and I don't like my time being monetized for money. I mean, really, your engagement and attention into these platforms is what's being monetized. They're not free app. They're not free. They actually cost you a lot. If your screen time, here's my thing. My screen time was average 5 hours and 30 minutes with no social media. I was just looking at the Weather Channel app, you know what I mean? Just to distract myself, you know what I mean? And my Delta app, just see how many points I had. 5.5 hours times 7 days a week, times 365 days a year, times the next 20 years. It came up to, over 4.5 years of my life are going to be spent on a screen. Now, if your average American is on a screen 7 to 9 hours a day, I mean, we're talking over 10 years of your life you're going to look back, and it's going to be spent on the screen. And I remember looking at that number and just not wanting to entertain that reality. I wanted to choose a different path. And that's really what we're inviting people into, a new way of living while utilizing the good of technology. So we're not anti-smartphone, we're not anti-technology. I'm speaking to you on a computer in the Delta Club in Wi-Fi, But we have to understand that this didn't just happen. Like this wasn't just by chance. This is by design, and there's many different physiological, social, emotional, spiritual implications that humanality is really addressing as a whole.
So good. So much I want to comment on, but one of the things you made me think of is in one of our past episodes, we had Dr. John Bishop on, and he was talking about how there's really three somewhat recent revolutions that have really, in some ways, damaged the human person. There's been some good things that have come out of them, but
Yeah.
they've damaged the human person. They've hurt our ability to love and hurt like families. And he talked about obviously industrial revolution, how that kind of took, men and some women away from their families and away from like a farming lifestyle. And then from there came the sexual revolution, of course, which had so many devastating effects on love, on marriage, relationships, all that. And then finally, the one he pointed to, which I don't think is talked about enough, that's why I like the work that you're doing, is the digital revolution, how that's like just upended so much of our culture and caused so many problems. And so I love that you guys are talking about this. I was thinking about how you said that, all these guys who've created these platforms and who are very successful businessmen are not, doing the things that they're trying to get us to do. It's fascinating. I remember hearing from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. He was in one of his like emails. I get this. He was talking about how, a lot of people have their best ideas in the shower. And he's like, for a lot of people, that's the only time they're away from their screen. So it's like, it's amazing what your brain can do and how like productive you can be when you're away from it. And the final thing I was going to say is I remember studying in Austria, going to Franciscan University, going over to Austria. And for anyone who's not familiar, we have this awesome study abroad program where we go for like, semester, 3-4 months. And we're literally there on this, like in the foothills of the Alps and at this old Carthusian monastery that's been converted into a hotel. And it's just like 180 of us. And now it's a little bit different, but back in the day, we didn't have any smartphones. And it was like, you maybe had a dumb phone, maybe. And that was it. And so obviously we're using our laptops and computers to get schoolwork done. But then when we would travel, we had nothing. And it was so, so freeing. Like some of the most peaceful, happiest times in my life were there. And then my time in Italy. And so, yeah, I've tasted it and it's so good. And I think like so many people feel that this is just the way our culture is and we can't really overcome it. What would you say to someone like that who's like, man, like I can't even consider giving up my smartphone. Like I live on the thing and I'm so productive on it. Like, what would you say to that objection?
Yeah, so many things. But I was just thinking briefly, Cal Newport in his book Digital Minimalism says that we weren't wired to be constantly wired. Like that's just not how we were designed. And just to your point about the shower, like we don't really have any space away from these platforms, and it is affecting our capacity to think, to reflect, to be creative. Actually, boredom is one of the most incredible places that you can begin to be creative. And I think there's a creativity crisis in our culture right now. So yeah, the people that are so addicted, most people are willing to admit they're totally addicted. So I haven't met anyone that's like, you know what, my smartphone's so amazing, it's doing everything. I don't actually struggle with being on it at all. I have perfect control of it. I mean, I actually haven't spoken to one person that's ever said that. But if that is the case, and maybe they're convinced that this is the only way forward, I would just say really ask the question, like, is this the best way you could, spend your time? Because while there is incredible like apps like Lyft, like a random person can come pick you up and take you, like that's an incredible technology.
Yeah.
I know most people aren't just using, their phones for these incredible tools. They're also getting caught up, scrolling on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter. So again, it's very difficult because the tool, the phone, has been so mixed with incredible tools. Most of our society now doesn't even have menus at a restaurant, right? You have to use a QR code.
Yeah.
We're actually, it's getting very difficult to live without these platforms. So here's the only difference. It's very difficult to talk about the moderation conversation, again, because this tool is largely addictive. So Abigail Schreier says, and speaking of this moderation thing, this is what I hear a lot is like, well, just be moderate with your technology.
Mm,
She says that when we talk about being moderate with our devices, it's like nurses going to high schools telling students to moderate ecstasy. It's just not possible. You'd never give an alcoholic a beer and tell them to moderate it. The issue is that we have these addictive things in our pockets, in our hands at all times. It's literally an appendage now that
mm,
we can't live without. So it's not like you can really fully detox from the thing because you just need it at all times. So yeah, for most people, I think the answer to the like productivity, I don't think I can get off this thing. I mean, I would one just say yes, it is incredibly productive, but maybe are there places with your relationship with your device and social media that you're finding are unhealthy or toxic? And I guarantee you, every person is going to say yes. So we're here to help. How do we help get those toxic places with our relationship with our devices out and kind of get back to a more healthy place? And to be honest, I don't know at this point with how toxic social media platforms are if there is a healthy place. Now, that's a hot take.
If you feel broken, understanding why is the first step to healing. Our free mini course called Why You Feel Broken features 5 short videos by a trauma therapist answering key questions such as, what is trauma? How does it affect your body, your mind, your emotions, and your relationships? It'll help you diagnose what's wrong so you can begin to heal and build a better life. Get the free mini course at restoredministry.com/broken, or just click the link in the show notes. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I remember when we were in Indianapolis, when I met you for the first time, you showed me your dumb phone. It was the Wise phone or light phone. And it was kind of impressive actually how like new looking they are. They're not the phones from the 90s or early 2000s. So I was impressed with that. But the few things I would throw out there, in addition to everything you just said, would be, doubling down on what you said. If someone's, saying that their phone makes them so productive and their life so easy and everything like that, which I think there's a lot of truth to it. But at what cost? You said that really well. And the other thing is it the only way? Like you said, you can do a lot of this stuff on your computer. And then what if, you could actually be more productive without your phone? Which I think, you quoted
Mm.
Cal Newport, and I forget the name of his new book, but I think it's slow productivity. It's like that idea that, anything great that you can produce in your life is going to come through a lot of like focused, deliberate work that, doesn't involve distractions, maybe some healthy breaks.
Yeah.
But it's like, good luck if your attention span is worse than a goldfish. Like, you're not going to be able to build anything great in your life. And there's going to be a lot of other struggles that come from that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of the whole funny thing I've been discovering that even when I deleted all my social media, I mean, I really actually felt withdrawal symptoms that first week
Yeah.
and 2 weeks, like actually anxious, feeling left out, the FOMO, the
Yeah.
whole thing, which again, they know this is how we feel. This is why young people can't get out of this. They feel stuck, because all their friends are on it.
Mm,
And when they get off of it alone or their parents are forcing them, yeah, they feel very alone. But yeah, Cal Newport's book is incredible because he goes through a list of, inventors, creators, businessmen. I mean, really anything worth building just takes like 20 plus years, and right now this is what I'm calling the instification of
mm,
everything. So I think, again, our habits and our day to day decisions really do impact our thinking and behavior. So, in regards to our Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, like watching influencers and watching them share every meal and everything they think and everything they do and every time they go to the bathroom and whatever, like this is warping our view of reality. Um, so the idea is, okay, I can get rich and famous instantly and go viral. This is what, like, the number one thing young people want to be is an influencer. Like, that's very alarming to me, because that isn't real
mm.
life. And it's mostly people projecting false illusions, and this is like the part of the difficulty is like a lot of people are, desiring to do so many good things, via the internet, via these different, websites. I think it's just missing the mark insofar as that you have to become obsessed with how many people are following you. Everything's about a reaction video to what this person said. We're losing actually authentic
Mm.
friendships. We're losing actually real in-person communication. Dr. Kardaras talks about this in his book Digital Madness, and Nicholas Carr talks about in his book The Shallows, how we're actually losing our capacity for what's called spectrum or critical thinking. So these platforms are actually making us dumber. Like our IQ is going down, but actually one of the main indicators of success in many different realms is actually creativity. And I would say our creativity is actually going along down
Yeah.
along with that,
Mm.
with our IQ. So my point being, to really do anything fulfilling, we're in a meaning crisis. We're in a loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General has shared we're in a loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General has shared that we need to have warning labels on our social media platforms,
Wow.
because this stuff is making us
Hmm.
sick. And really, anything worth doing in life, I believe, takes a really long time, and it's slow and it's painful. Like even just building this
Yeah.
organization, it's like this is an incredible undertaking that is not instant, and it's probably going to take the next 40 years to really unpack for the world what I
Yeah.
want to unpack for the
Mm.
world. Um, and along with that, I think it's pretty clear that at this point in time, the experiment's gone horribly wrong. So, 10 years ago, we didn't have this data, right? But now we do. And it's like, well, what do we do moving forward? I don't think the influencer model, creating a culture of consumption and obsession with self is healthy. And we're really interested in helping humans flourish. I'd say Humanality is more of a wellness movement We actually don't even call ourselves a ministry. We're actually just a movement for humans. So it doesn't matter if you're religious or where you land on the political spectrum, everyone is asking the question, how do I be more human? 90% of our time is now spent indoors, with 10% of that time being outside. 100 years ago, that was completely
Wow.
the opposite. We're not getting enough sunlight. We're not getting enough movement. We're eating highly ultra processed food. 60% of the American diet is ultra processed food. Almost 70% of our society is,
Mhm.
overweight or obese. These are a multiplicity of issues coming together that within our, calling them villages at our universities, because it's this idea of how do you get back to your local village? Again, we were talking about that
Mhm.
omnipresence idea. I can't really do much about all the wars around the world, but I can go help that person down the street that just like needs someone to say hello and maybe
Mhm.
needs food. Or I can call that friend, that I know is struggling. And instead of just liking their picture, I think I could call them and actually check in and see how they're
Yeah.
doing. There's people like literal neighbors next door that need a hello, that need a hi. Like I've lived in a lot of different places, and I'm sad to say I've barely known my neighbors, you know? So with globalization, with all of its benefits and amazing attributes, again, it's making us lonelier than ever and unhappier than ever before. And so, really, the things we're proposing in the club, which we can get into, maybe are solutions that we're proposing, are actually to help people heal physically, mentally, spiritually,
So
and
good.
emotionally. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the whole person, and it's literally applicable to every human. So that's what's so exciting about our work. And I'm also a national board certified health and wellness coach. So I'm very passionate about behavior change. I loved you quoted the Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
But I'm very interested in
Mhm.
virtue, and I'm very interested in those questions, like what does it mean to be
Mhm.
happy? What does it mean to live a life
Mhm.
worth living? So anyway, those are some of the things I'm interested in.
So good, man. I love that. Yeah, let's get into the solution. Before we do, I'm just curious if you'd add anything about like young people who come from broken families in particular. I know we've talked a lot about kind of where technology
Mhm.
leads us when it comes to like anxiety, depression, attention span, all those different things that we talked about. What do you think is driving, at least for these young people from broken families, their use of technology as an escape?
Yes, there is a 20% increase in low income communities on all platforms and all
Hmm.
gaming platforms. So yeah, single mom, three kids. I mean, the phone and tech is a
Hmm.
pacifier. And it's hard to blame these, families that are having to do this. But man, I mean, I pretty much live my life in airports, and it is wild when you walk around how many young kids are just glued to a screen. And there's an incredible amount of data showing that this is affecting their hardware, right? Their brains, their communication skills, their emotional recognition skills. So it definitely is affecting younger populations, especially low income families, more. And it's a problem. I mean, it's actually creating these bigger disparities because the more wasted time they experience on these devices, the less they're engaging reality, the less they're building skill sets, the less they're, able to engage in their schoolwork and actually finish, homework and projects. So it's a real issue. And the whole idea that, every kid needs technology and a phone or an iPad, to be successful in this day and age, it's a complete lie. I mean, Jonathan Haidt's been talking about this. Yeah, again, Dr. Kardaras, Anna Lemke, her book
Hmm.
Dopamine Nation. I mean, there's a slew of PhDs, MDs that are sounding the alarm that, the idea that every kid needs to have an iPad with full access to the internet is going to help them succeed. It's actually the complete opposite.
No, it's a real problem, and that's why the work you're doing is so important. What are you guys offering? What's the solution to this whole mess we're in?
Yes, this is the good news part. So I'm excited about this because it's dark, dude. I mean, it's even worse than what we just talked about, sadly, with, how children are getting
Yeah.
exploited, the sex trafficking, pornography. It's really, really
Mm.
bad. And so our solution is pretty radical. And I think Jonathan Haidt's book is great, but I don't think it goes far enough. And I think he's just a little too soft, to be honest. So our, proposition right now to college students, which we realize we're late, right? We realize that at that point, we need to go further upstream to really help,
Mhm.
young people heal. But at the university level, these kids can make the decision. They get to decide to give it their smartphone, take on a dumb phone. And we've just found that, students are doing this together are so excited to opt out of the matrix. So you join a Humanality Village at one of our 6 locations. You can get a light phone or a wise phone. You go through a 30-day detox that we have
Mhm.
together, which again is diving into all the data, little challenges throughout. And then during the year, every month we have, a meeting where we've synthesized multidisciplinary fields on technology and mental health, spiritual health, physical health. So we're unpacking all the data of what it's doing to us, our attention spans, our social connections, our dating life, our, everything, right? So once a month they meet, they dive into the data, and then we're giving them like phone-free experiences. So they're going on
That's awesome.
phone-free hikes and having phone-free bonfire nights and creating new games just without
Mm.
their phones. Like one of our groups at Ave just had a cookout night, and they just literally went and cooked food and grilled meat without their phones. It sounds hilarious how simple this is, but it's like there's one group I was talking to, that was sharing like some young guys, they're going through this detox and they're like, we literally don't know what to do. So young people actually don't know what to do when they aren't engaging in some of these technologies. So we have a slew of challenges that students take on, and they get to choose their mode. Okay, so this is like the Humanality modes. You join the club, you can be in human mode, rebel mode, or savage mode. So human mode, you go grayscale, you keep your smartphone, you take off all addictive apps, you just have maybe podcast, maps, banking,
Mhm.
very basic. Rebel mode, you go to a light phone or a wise phone. You can still have some of your social media platforms on your computer, but again, just that little bit of friction from it not being in your pocket is just going to decrease your chances to just
Mm.
endlessly scroll on it, right? Then you got super rebel mode, which is just a light phone, wise phone, no social media accounts, and everything is done on your computer. And then savage mode is just choosing one device. I mean, we had some students that did this. They went no cell phone and just used a computer
Wow.
laptop, which sounds so wild now, but it's funny. Like, that's how most people lived
Yeah.
for millions of years. Yeah. Like, this is actually more human, and these students are
So,
thriving. So you pick a mode, and then you have a monthly phone challenge and a monthly wellness challenge with the community. So, for example, monthly phone challenge, no phone at meals. Say you look at the phone 3 hours at each of those meals, right? You add that up by the end of the year, it's close to 70 something days. So if you just don't look at your phone at 3 meals every day, you get 71 days of your life back.
wow.
So last year, just with all the events that students did in their clubs, they got about an average of 144 hours back from their lives just being in the Humanity Club. And so yeah, at the end of the year, we bring in a speaker each semester as well to speak on the topic. And then at the end of the year, the Humanity Club throws a concert for the whole school with the cost of admission being your phone. So you just have to experience music without a screen. So students are, I mean, they're literally having like transformative experiences. So you have to realize like this generation now grew up on the smartphone. So they're learning how to interact. They're learning how to flirt and go on a date. And I mean, literally, like learning how to ask people out in person. They're learning how to do new things. Like there's a guy in our club that was addicted to YouTube, got off YouTube, and he realized, and I want to emphasize this point in a moment, he realized that he had the desire to learn to sing and play guitar. And now he's like playing events and learned how to sing. And like that's exactly what I love. I really believe Humanality is going to help people get their time back, their lives back. We're going to have the newest, best artists, authors, physicians, lawyers, teachers. They're going to come out of these clubs looking very different from their generation because they're going to be more human, and being more fully human, they're going to be happier. And we also have some fun like sauna challenges and cold plunge challenges and circadian challenges where you have to watch the sunrise and sunset and not let the screen be the first thing your eyes see, but actual morning sunlight. So we're incorporating a lot of wellness principles too. And yeah, right now we're in 6 universities. We have a waiting list of high schools, and we're just kind of about to take off. We're just kind of in this preparation, kind of period here, gathering all the data and getting ready to blast it out to the world. The funny thing is, you probably don't know this is happening because we're not on any social media platforms. So that's part of the gift of podcast. And I actually love podcasts. Long form podcasts are amazing. I myself was addicted to podcasts as well. So I had to actually find that balance as well of like, I was listening to too much good information. I would say I'm a recovering addict of information. So in my car rides, it was filled with podcasts. In my workouts, it was filled with podcasts. In my flights, it was filled with podcasts. I'd say even good things, all good things. So I've even had to found my own new methods moving forward to not be constantly consuming information and miss out on information. And that's been extremely healing for myself. But anyway, that's a little bit of what is happening in the clubs. And students are responding in an incredible way.
So good. I'm sure there's so many benefits. What are kind of the biggest benefits you've seen? And if someone wants to jump into this, what's the first step? If you're from a divorced or broken family, the holidays can be so stressful and challenging. You know that. Pressure to choose between parents, being reminded of your family's brokenness, especially if you've been living out of the house or at school, and just feeling a bit lost and alone in navigating it all. Thankfully, you're not alone. Our free guide, 5 Tips to Navigate the Holidays in a Broken Family, offers really practical advice that you won't hear anywhere else, a worksheet to plan out your time with your parents, super helpful, and even a copy-paste template you can edit for communicating with your parents through messages or even a call. Most of all, the guide helps you feel less alone and more in control when the holidays hit. You can get the free guide at restoredministry.com/holidays, or just click the link in the show notes.
Yeah, so if you're at one of our 6 schools, if you're at Christendom, Ave Maria, Franciscan University, University of Dallas, Benedictine, or TAC, you can join a club there. If you want to start a club at your university, you can be totally secular. This is not a religious political thing. Anyone can start a Humanality village at your university. So if you want to do that, just reach out to us from our website, humanality.org, and we'll help you start a club. But really, if you just find a few people that want to do this together, that's really all it takes. You would be amazed. I mean, average year one of Humanality Village is starting was 40 plus students. Like, we're all in,
Mm.
we've had as much as 60 students in one of our
Wow.
villages around the country. So really, if you're at one of those universities, join. And if you want to start one at your own university, there's nothing stopping you. There's no startup fees. You essentially create the club and you fundraise. Each club fundraise for what they want to experience, whether they want to fund the phones, Humanality merch, the speaker, the concert at the end of the year, other phone-free activities.
That's awesome.
Um, they get to fundraise and they create the experiences they want. So that's a great place to start. And then I'd say for the general
Mm.
population, we're going to have some resources for them as well, probably in the next couple months. But the best thing you can do right now is probably go through our 30-day digital detox with
Mm.
Hallow, which everyone always is like, oh, that's an app. What do you do it? And my answer again is we are not opposed to technology. Hallow is not trying to addict you through social approval and intermittent
Mm.
positive feedback. We are happy with our partnership with them. And in the coming weeks, we're going to have a 30-day
Yeah.
digital detox you can go through with Hallow. So I'd point people there, and that's going to walk you through all the data, all the hacks, all the ways to move forward. And I mean, I know people say this about a lot of other things, but this is so particularly true to this movement. I literally believe this is going to change your life because your life comes down to time and attention. And right now, our time and attention is being sucked into the abyss. When you get your time and attention back, it's going to change
Yeah.
your life. And here's the thing, my life hasn't gotten any easier once I've gotten off of these technologies. My life is still difficult in many ways, but I think my capacity to be resilient
Mm.
and have incredible friendships, have a prayer life, exercise, sleep. The average American is losing 30 minutes of
Mm.
sleep per night. That's largely due to the invention of the light bulb, but also social
Wow.
media and our devices. I mean, life doesn't just get easier all of a sudden because I got off of Instagram, but it does actually become incredibly more
Mm.
fulfilling. So I just want to invite people. I know this is scary. This is terrifying for most humans to think about not being
Mm.
on these platforms. And even if you get amazing information, because there are incredible pieces of information on all these platforms, the detriment along with it, I think, outweighs the good. And even if you just take a break, maybe this isn't what you have
Yeah.
to do the rest of your life. Go on a 30-day detox. Maybe go to a light phone
Mm.
for a year. Like, what's 1 year of your
Yeah.
life going to look like if you just went to light phone? Like, do a scientific experiment and just see what happens. If you want to go back to your smartphone later and go back to all your social media
Mhm.
platforms, do it. But just give it a chance. Like, don't look at the news, which I know is really difficult during this time
Yeah.
in our society. But imagine just not going on the news for
Mm.
30 days. Here's what I found that was super interesting. When I didn't go on the news for 30 days, the world kept happening.
Yeah.
Like, reality didn't like just explode into oblivion. Like, life kept happening, and I knew what was happening in my environment, in my village, and I was happier for it. So I hope that encourages people. There's a huge fear aspect to this of missing out, not having real connections, being lonelier. I've experienced the complete opposite, and most people will too. you really have to take that leap of faith, but find
Mm,
someone to do it with. And two major predictors of actually long-term sustained behavior change is your environment and accountability. In the Humanality
yeah.
Club, you get both. Your environment is now a group of people that are opting out of this norm of being on these platforms, and you have accountability. So maybe go through this 30-day detox with Hallow, with your family, with your coworkers, with your
Mm.
friends. We're also going to have stuff available for anyone soon, but yeah, that would be my encouragement moving forward is take a leap of faith. Like just do a scientific experiment and see what happens.
So good, man. Thank you so much for being here. I just love the work you're doing, and I'm excited to promote it to our audience. Yes, when you were speaking, just all I could think of is like, this is such a barrier to build a marriage, build a date, like whatever. This stands as such a huge barrier. So I love the work you're doing. I love how simple it is, and I love how novel too. I think it's simple and novel at the same time, which is a hard thing to pull off. So well done, man. Really appreciate you and the work you're doing, your wealth of information too. This has been awesome. Again, everyone, I invite you to check out humanality.org. We'll link to that in the show notes. And yeah, just want to give you final last word, like what final encouragement or advice would you offer to everyone listening, especially if they feel maybe a bit heavier the weight of what we've spoken about and even discouraged? I know you just kind of spoke to that, but any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I'd say don't be afraid to heal. And I really think what these technologies have done to us, we have to be willing to enter into a healing process. And that's painful. And I'll never forget, I was playing an event with my band in West Point. This Navy SEAL Ranger dude, whatever, 8 kids, been to war 3 times, was driving me and my band to the airport. And he just said something I'll never forget. He said, if you seek comfort, you will deprive yourself of self knowledge. So I'd say one of the things that these devices have done to us, which is really sad, is that we're escaping our embodied reality and self to see someone else's. And I would just encourage people that you're worth getting to know. Like get to know yourself in a place of solitude and discover what silence does to you. It's incredibly difficult to get to know yourself and love yourself and your neighbor and God. But I would encourage you to go on that healing journey and instead of escaping our emotions and our difficulties, to face them. And it's easier said than done. But the healing process is so worth it. And Dr. Bob Schuchts says that, hurt people, healed people heal people. And I want to be part of seeing humanity heal. I think we need a healing movement. I think humanality is it. So I just want to encourage people to not be afraid to heal and make some difficult decisions with our relationship with tech. And you're going to experience healing, and it's going to be amazing.
That wraps up this episode. If this podcast has helped you, feel free to subscribe or follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Not only is that the best way to not miss future episodes, but the more subscribers we have, the more the apps will show our show to people who are looking for help, and it only takes a few seconds. If you've already done that, feel free to review or rate the show. That also helps us reach other people, and we appreciate that feedback. And in closing, always remember, you are not doomed to repeat your family's dysfunction. You can break that cycle and build a better life, and we're here to help. And keep in mind the words of C.S. Lewis, who said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending.